Here are today's top stories. The AFP lauds the petition to cancel the registration of progressive groups that support the CPP-NPA. The PNP calls out a study showing erroneous data on deaths from the government's war on drugs. President Duterte leads the opening of the Palarong Pambansa in Davao City. And Donaire knocks out Stephen Young to retain his WBA Bantamweight Super Championship.
Good day, I'm Rom Dulfo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Our top story, Malacanang says a U.S. resolution condemning the Philippine government's war on drugs is an outrageous interference with Philippine sovereignty. The resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors of San Francisco in the U.S. calls for support for a congressional probe on U.S. tax money going to the Philippine military and police. It also expressed support for detained Senator Laila de Lima and Rappler CEO Maria Ressa. Presidential spokesperson Sal Panelo says the resolution is an unacceptable intrusion into our legal processes and an outrageous interference with the country's sovereignty. Panelo criticized how the California board readily believed the false narratives as well as the bogus statistics on the administration's drug war. He said critics and detractors of the president who failed to convince the majority of Filipinos of their propaganda have to turn to foreign politicians or international human rights groups. He also reminds the San Francisco Board of Supervisors that the Philippines is no longer a colony of the U.S. The Philippine National Police is questioning the accuracy of studies made by the Ateneo Policy Center, which claims that over 7,000 people have died in the government's war on drugs. PNP spokesperson Bernard Banak says it is totally erroneous to automatically record more than 7,000 homicide deaths with all sorts of possible motives as drug-related incidents. Banak notes, according to government's records, the drug war has only produced 5,281 fatalities from July 2016 until February 28 this year. The PNP spokesperson also said it is normal for policemen to be accused of human rights violations amid the conduct of anti-drug operations and maintains the PNP adheres to the rule of law, respects human rights, and values life. He says over 8,000 personnel have already been disciplined for various offenses and illegal acts, including use of illegal drugs and coddling or protecting drug suspects. The Ateneo Policy Center recorded a total of 7,029 drug-related deaths from May 2016 until December last year. The Palarong Pambansa 2019 has opened at the Davao City UP Sports Complex in UP Mindanao. The 62nd Palarong is expected to bring around 20,000 visitors to Davao City as student athletes from 17 regions of the Philippines compete in the annual sports event. The city's hosting of the Palarong is the second since 1950. President Duterte led the opening of the Palarong Pambansa. In his speech, the president said he is leaving the fate of the country to the hands of the younger generations when his term expires. He also told participants to stay away from illegal drugs and instead turn to sports to develop important life skills. The number of families affected by magnitude 6.1 earthquake that rocked parts of Luzon has now climbed to over 3,600. And the RRMC says these families are from 41 barangays in central Luzon. Nearly 1,000 families are being aided inside 6 evacuation centers, while another 951 families are being helped outside of the temporary shelters. The number of fatalities is placed at 18. 243 had been injured and 3 others went missing. Damaged structures and buildings in the Ilocos region, Central Luzon, National Capital Region, and Calabarzon were placed at 334. Houses damaged by the earthquake is now at 1,746. The 3-day local absentee voting for the May 13 midterm election starts today. Meanwhile, a partylist group calls for extra attention to the elderly during elections. More on these and other news around the metro from Janice Cave.
Over 63 million ballots for the midterm elections are already printed. COMELEC says it has started shipping the official ballots initially to far-flung areas, with priority areas being the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Sulu, Basilan, Tawi-Tawi, and Batanes. The COMELEC will be using 85,000 vote counting machines in the same number of clustered precincts nationwide in the May polls. In other news, local absentee voting opens today for government employees, police, military, and media personnel working on the May 13 elections. Only voters who submitted an absentee voting application last March 11 will be allowed to participate. Meanwhile, the Senior Citizens Party List called on voters and other groups, especially the youth, to assist the elders during the election day. This is to ensure that the seniors will vote comfortably. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Still to come, the UCP seeks a 710 peso across-the-board wage hike. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Ang fake news affects everybody worldwide. We have to think of our stakeholders. Sino ba yung recipients ng mga fake news? Hindi ba? Yun yung pinakamahalaga. How is it going to affect them? It will have a negative effect on the people who belong in a certain community or a certain organization. Diba? So we always have to look if it's right, if it's the truth, and if it is correct. Diba? Sometimes, nadadala din tayo sa headlines. Parang, wow!
Pinalala.
Grabe naman tong headline na to. Tapos, yun na nga, pagbasa mo ng content, it doesn't even match. Diba? Pero, some people are so taken aback na, yun na nga, nadadala na sa headline, share na ng share. So, it's the information or the knowledge stops right there. Sa headline lang. Diba? And, yun, it already affects so many people in the end, negatively. Your own organization is taking up the courage to say, huwag kayo matakot, magsumbong kayo.
Apo, correct.
Diba? Kung kayo yung nilalapitan ng mga kandidato, ng mga nagpapanggap, it's a fight. That's why we call it a fight against fake news. We have to be that aggressive and that vigilant. Kasi apektado in that case yung mga kandidato na.
The military hails a mounting call to cancel political groups that support the communist movement. It hopes that more Filipinos would expose the crimes and deception of the CPP-NPA. Miguel Hill with the story.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines says the country needs more people who will surface to expose the truth about the so-called progressive groups with links to the CPP-NPA terrorist movement. Major General Antonio Parlade Jr. of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict says they need more people to expose the true colors of left-leaning groups as well as politicians who support them. This after Angela Aguilar filed a petition before the COMELEC on April 26 against party lists and other progressive groups who have suspected links to the CPP-NPA. Under the Party List System Act, the COMELEC can cancel the registration of any group that advocates violence or unlawful means to seek its goal and violates or fails to comply with laws, rules, and regulations relating to elections. Parlade says Aguilar's petition is very timely and should serve as a wake-up call for Filipinos long tired of the insurgency being foisted upon them by the communist rebels. He also warned parents to keep a tight watch on their children and stop them from being used as pawns in their illegal activities against the government. Parlade also slammed anew the human rights violations, the recruitment of minors, the purging and other abuses that the mainstream media does not expose while nitpicking and twisting government activities. He says this will not stop until the entire country and its people learn to realize the deception and exploitation imposed on society by these progressive groups linked with the CPP-NPA. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Miguel Hill.
The military has yet to detect any threat coming from communist rebels for the celebration of Labor Day on Wednesday. AFP Public Affairs Chief Noel Datayato says leftist activists are only conducting rallies to push their labor agenda. Despite the absence of threats, Datayato said its Joint Task Force National Capital Region will coordinate with the police for possible contingency measures. A labor group is seeking for a 710 peso per day across-the-board wage increase for workers in the National Capital Region. TUCP and other union officers filed this latest wage hike petition before the NCR Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board. If the union's petition is approved, this will bring the minimum wage in Metro Manila to 1,247 pesos per day, even as the wage hike petition is intended to benefit employees across the board. The UCP spokesperson Alan Tanhusay says the decision makers must know there is an urgent need to raise wages so that people can live decently, and that the poverty threshold is very much lower than what it should be. The TUCP is also set to file separate wage hike petitions in other regions. Former Agriculture Secretary William Dar proposed the creation of a Department of Fisheries that will be independent of the Department of Agriculture. Dar says the proposed department will boost the entrepreneurial ecosystem for marine fisheries and aquaculture. He says that malnutrition and poverty still exist in many parts of the country, particularly in coastal communities, noting that small fisher folk still belong to the poorest of the poor. With the creation of the new department, Dar believes it will give more attention to and support for the sustainable development of the country's fisheries and aquatic resources. Local candidates in Maguindanao signed a covenant for peaceful elections. Meanwhile, a women's group promotes the use of environment-friendly cloth diapers. More on these and other news from the provinces from Bench Bondo.
In Maguindanao, a peace covenant signing for all local candidates were held in Paglat Town in the hope of achieving clean, honest, and peaceful elections on May 13. The event is spearheaded by the Commission on Elections, the Philippine National Police, and the Army's 33rd Infantry Battalion. In Cebu, a group called Cebu Mommy/Woman Support Group called on mothers to use the more environment-friendly cloth diapers over disposable ones. The group warns that a child can use up to around 7,200 disposable diapers in a year, which is more hazardous to the environment. More than 200 Cebuanos participated in the simultaneous global Great Diaper Change held at the Globe Telecom IT Plaza in Cebu City. In Negros Occidental, a total of 102 sachets of shabu worth about 2.7 million pesos were recovered following a buy-bust operation in Barangay 6, Victoria City. Suspected drug group leader and high-value target Donaire Halandoon was killed in an encounter with police while his 18-year-old live-in partner was arrested during the operation. Halandoon was said to be supplying shabu to contacts in both Negros Occidental and Panay Island. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Bench Bondo.
Up next, the CPCP condemns the death of 3 Filipinas in Cyprus. Donaire knocks out Stephen Young to retain his WBA Bantamweight Super Championship. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Trabaho ba kamo? Marami yan. Sa Build, 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 maraming jobs, jobs, jobs. Tara na!
CBCP Episcopal Commission on Migrants and the Itinerant People condemned the killings of 3 Filipino women in Cyprus. The 3 Filipinas, one of whom was with her daughter, were reported missing between 2017 and 2018. The victims' bodies were found in an abandoned mine shaft earlier this April. However, the 6-year-old daughter of one Filipina is also feared dead, but her remains have not yet been found. CBCP EZMI Chairman Bishop Ruperto Santos described the incident as brutal, tragic, and inhuman. The DFA says the embassy representatives are now in Cyprus to meet with authorities and provide further assistance to the investigation, including provision of DNA samples to help in identifying the victims. In our foreign news, Chinese President Xi Jinping says the Second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation is more substantive and has produced more results. The Chinese president says BRI parties have reached 283 deliverables, including intergovernmental cooperation agreements, practical cooperation projects, and multilateral dialogue. A total of $64 billion worth of business-to-business agreements were signed during the three-day forum. Xi is optimistic that the China-led Belt and Road Initiative will gain more partners globally. President Duterte was among 38 heads of state who attended the BRF, along with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde. In sports, Donaire kept the World Boxing Association Bantamweight Super Championship title after knocking out Stephen Young in the semifinals of the World Boxing Super Series in Lafayette, Louisiana, USA. Donaire delivered a solid left hook that knocked Young out at round 6 to punch a ticket to the final. Donaire moves up to 40 wins and 5 losses with 26 knockouts and will face either Naoya Inoue or Emmanuel Rodriguez. Inoue and Rodriguez will square off in the other semifinal match on May 19 in Glasgow, with the WBA regular and the International Boxing Federation belts to be unified in the process. Emergency situations such as heart attacks along with unconsciousness can happen, especially in this brutal hot weather. Health experts highlight the need to learn CPR, not only as first aid, but also to mitigate the effects of cardiovascular diseases. Here's our report.
Cardiac arrest is the predominant mode of death among Filipinos with heart problems. The Philippine Statistics Authority says about 74,000 cases, or 12% of deaths in 2016, were caused by cardiovascular or heart disease. The Department of Health says CPR must begin within the first 4 to 6 minutes when the arrest started, while advanced life support measures must begin within 8 minutes to avoid brain death. To perform the CPR properly, place the heel of one hand over the center of the person's chest. Put your other hand on top of your hand and keep your elbows straight and position your shoulders directly above your hands before you do the compression. Second, perform 100 to 120 compressions per minute. Make sure that each compression is 2 inches at the least. One must continue doing the CPR until the patient or victim is brought back to life or until the rescue team arrives. In July 2018, the DOH launched its hands-only CPR program, which aims to educate people on what must be done in case of disasters, emergencies, or life-and-death situations. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said it can increase the survival rate of those who lost consciousness or had cardiac arrest by 50%. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Joyce Goodies.
Let's now check out the weather forecast for Metro Manila and the rest of the country. Here's another look at today's biggest stories.
The AFP lauds the petition to cancel the registration of progressive groups that support the CPP-NPA. The PNP calls out a study showing erroneous data on deaths from the government's war on drugs. President Duterte leads the opening of the Palarong Pambansa in Davao City. And Nonito Donaire knocks out Stephen Young to retain his WBA Bantamweight Super Championship.
Thank you for watching another edition of the PNA Newsroom. To check out these and other stories, visit the PNA website or follow the Philippine News Agency on Facebook and Twitter. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags on all our social media platforms and websites. And that's your daily dose of latest news and information that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. I'm Rom Dulfo. Good day.